look, I think as a CEO, we want to basically just have a clear rule book, right? And if a clear rules are published, we're happy to follow it. And if those rules change, we're happy to follow those.
Brian Armstrong is fast becoming perhaps the most prominent and important figure in crypto. He could also be the industry's best hope for convincing politicians in the United States to draft regulations that enable it to flourish in the land of the free. He's built one of crypto's most recognizable and successful brands while simultaneously managing to stay, well, sometimes, in the right people's good books. So, in today's video, I'm going to explore who Brian Armstrong is, where he came from, where he's headed, and why what he says and does over the next few months could shape the future of crypto. Now, Brian will be familiar to almost everyone watching this as the co-founder and CEO of Coinbase, the biggest crypto exchange in the US and the only one, so far, that's gone on to become a public company. We'll talk more about Coinbase going public a little later on because it is a big, big deal. Brian grew up in San Jose, California, and fell in love with computers while still a kid. In an interview late last year, he described his childhood thus, quote, "I liked technology. I just found it fascinating. I was kind of a night owl too, so I somehow ended up staying up until 2 a.m. every morning just playing on my computer, reading things. When I eventually got the internet, I was just endlessly fascinated, consuming different things. And I was a zombie in the mornings and tried to get through school and get passing grades, basically." Now, despite the antisocial hours and questionable approach to his schooling, Brian went on to graduate from Rice University in Texas with a master's in computer science. That was in 2006. After leaving university, he spent some time in Argentina, where he saw firsthand the effects of rampant inflation before going on to work for the likes of IBM, Deloitte, and Airbnb as a software engineer. Then, in 2009, he read the Bitcoin white paper. Now, back in those early days, getting your hands on Bitcoin wasn't easy. Unless you knew how to mine it or knew someone who did, you didn't have that many other options. This changed with the arrival of Mt. Gox, which began life as a trading platform for Magic the Gathering cards, but was then repurposed to become a Bitcoin exchange. This made Bitcoin relatively accessible to regular people for the first time, and Mt. Gox was soon accounting for the vast majority of Bitcoin trading volume. That said, the exchange was notoriously unreliable and unsafe, and many people were wary of it. And rightly so, for, as we now know, the story of Mt. Gox does not have a happy ending. Indeed, as its creditors are, at the time of filming, still waiting for their money back, well, it doesn't yet have an ending at all. Anyway, Brian was keenly aware that buying Bitcoin wasn't an easy or stress-free process, and his bright idea was to rectify this. So, in 2012, he launched Coinbase in partnership with an ex-Goldman Sachs trader named Fred Ursum. In actual fact, Brian had first begun working on Coinbase with another Bitcoin enthusiast named Ben Reeves, but the two fell out shortly after being accepted into the prestigious Y Combinator startup school. The issue was over whether Coinbase should be custodial or not. Ben felt that users should retain the private keys to their crypto, while Brian wanted the platform itself to fulfill this function. Ben went on to found another company, Blockchain.com, which today functions as a kind of crypto financial services company. One of Ben's future hires would be a young Canadian by the name of Changpeng Zhao. I wonder whatever happened to him. Anyway, shortly after parting ways with Ben, Brian recruited Fred and Coinbase went live in November 2012. Incidentally, fact fans, the name Coinbase is derived from a bit of Bitcoin terminology. When a miner creates a block to add to the Bitcoin blockchain, the first transaction in that block, which awards the lucky miner their block reward and fees, is known as the Coinbase transaction. Now, the story of Coinbase's ascent to the pinnacle of the crypto industry is a fascinating one. As you might expect for a company that's gone from a startup to being listed on the Nasdaq in under a decade, and in an industry that is itself only 14 years old, the journey has been a bumpy one. It's told in detail in this book by journalist Jeff John Roberts, and when you read of the long hours and the battles with authorities, hackers, rivals, customers, colleagues, crypto bros, the media, and plenty more besides, it becomes harder to begrudge Brian his multi-billion-dollar fortune. Seriously, while the money is great, running a crypto exchange is not a job for the faint-hearted. And because most people's primary interactions with crypto are through exchanges like Coinbase and others, exchange CEOs have become some of the most powerful, recognizable, and scrutinized people in the industry. As such, they're finding themselves, willingly or unwillingly, to be key figures in the ongoing arguments over regulation and crypto's place in the world. Now, one in particular seemed willing to step up to the plate and fight crypto's corner in Washington, D.C., until it came to light that he was, well, not quite what the industry needed, and his empire was built on sand, quite literally, seeing as FTX was based in the Bahamas. Yes, Sam Bankman-Fried seemed to be the poster child for the crypto industry in the US and beyond, and his quite spectacular fall from grace seems to have pushed Brian further into the spotlight. And it looks like he's starting to become more comfortable in this role. Despite being a self-professed introvert, happiest in front of his computer, and who apparently would sit for hours working with his headphones on rather than talking to his colleagues and employees, Brian now seems increasingly more at ease with being a public figure. He's certainly become more visible in recent months. Having in the past been reluctant to do many interviews, he's now becoming a much more regular figure in the mainstream media. Meanwhile, like any true crypto bro, he's also an active voice on Twitter with over 1 million followers and counting. He's also the charitable type too, having signed up to the Giving Pledge back in 2018, thereby promising to give most of his money away to good causes. Stop me if you've heard that one somewhere before. Anyhow, in that same interview I quoted from earlier, Brian had this to say about stepping ever more into the public eye. Quote, "I'm happy to play that role, and I'm happy to go do all the things like appearing before Congress and interviews and TV when I need to, but that's not going to be my primary focus. My primary focus is going to be how do we build better products for our customers." Now, that is all well and good, but as crypto's image problem persists in the wake of SBF, Brian is likely to find himself needing to spend more time on TV and on Capitol Hill. The crypto industry in the US needs a high-profile spokesperson who isn't staring down the barrel of a multi-decade jail term, and Brian is looking more and more like the best candidate for that role. He's built Coinbase into not only the biggest US exchange, but he's also taken it public, a huge achievement for a company in an industry that's viewed with such outright hostility by so many powerful people. Coinbase has faced and continues to face many, many challenges, and the performance of its stock hasn't always been a joy to behold, but Brian has successfully steered it through a turbulent decade. Yes, Coinbase has had to pay multiple fines, deal with staff walkouts, and endure the fallout from rogue employees. Some product launches haven't gone quite to plan. The SEC is likely to come for its staking service before too long, and it's been forced to lay off staff as the bear market has bitten. But other US exchanges are also feeling the heat. Jesse Powell recently stepped down as CEO of Kraken, itself recently body-slammed by the SEC, while over at Gemini, the Winklevoss twins are embroiled in the fallout from the Genesis DCG fiasco. Meanwhile, while figures like Kristen Smith at the Blockchain Association and Senator Lummis of Wyoming have worked tirelessly to plead crypto's case in Washington, perhaps the best person to represent the industry is the shy kid from San Jose who has built a multi-billion-dollar company from scratch in just 12 years. And he only turned 40 2 months ago. Not bad going.